Years ago, I worked the graveyard shift at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., just me and dead silence. This wasn't some modern convenience store with cameras covering every angle. The owner was cheap, traffic was almost non-existent, and most nights the loudest thing I heard was the persistent hum of dying fluorescent lights overhead. I'd gotten used to the quiet, the endless hours where nothing happened, and time seemed to stand still. But there was one night that changed everything. It was around 2 a.m. when the door chime suddenly broke the silence. I looked up from my magazine and saw a tall man walking in, early 30s, athletic build. At first glance, he seemed completely normal. But then my eyes adjusted to the light and I realized something was terribly wrong. He was absolutely drenched in blood. Not just a little bit, not a nosebleed or a cut from an accident. His chest looked like a crime scene, with thick, crimson streaks running down his arms and dark smears across his face. There was so much blood that my brain actually refused to process what I was seeing for a full second. But what really froze me wasn't the blood itself. It was his eyes. They were completely empty, showing no panic, no urgency, no fear whatsoever. Just an eerie, unsettling calm. He noticed me staring at him, and then he did something that made my skin crawl. He smiled, and in the calmest voice you can possibly imagine, he said, "Don't worry, it's not my blood." That didn't help. Every alarm bell in my head started screaming at once. He killed someone. You're completely alone. You're next. But somehow I didn't run and I didn't scream. Survival instinct took over and I just nodded like he'd commented on the weather. Then went back to pretending to read my magazine even though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. He casually browsed the aisles like it was any other Tuesday night, grabbed some chips and a drink, then walked up to the counter. I rang him up without making eye contact, trying to act as normal as possible. He paid cash, turned around and walked out. The door chimed behind him and for a moment, I just stood there in shock. The second I heard his car engine start outside, I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold the receiver. I was mid-sentence telling the operator about the man covered in blood when I heard it again. That door chime. My stomach dropped. I looked up, and there he was again, standing in the doorway. He must have seen me through the window. This time there was no calm, no casual smile. He stormed toward the counter with his face twisted in rage and demanded, "Did you call the cops?" I lied, but he knew. He could see right through me. Everything happened so fast. He didn't walk around the counter. He vaulted over it in one fluid motion and tackled me to the ground. His hands, I didn't sleep much after that conversation. The woman checked into room 210 without another word. I watched her climb the stairs on the camera feed, her figure disappearing down the hallway. At 3:03 a.m., the phone rang again. I already knew what room it would be. "Front desk," I answered, my voice tense. "Why did you move her?" the same man asked. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "Who is this?" I demanded. Silence. Then, "You shouldn't interfere." The call ended. I checked the cameras again. Room 210's door was open. The woman wasn't inside. Panic crept up my spine. I grabbed the master key and flashlight. I told myself I was being stupid, but my feet were already moving toward the stairs. The second floor smelled different. Old carpet, damp air, something metallic underneath it all. I walked past 206, then 207, and stopped in front of 208. The door was slightly open. My hand hovered over the knob. That's when I heard crying. Soft, muffled, coming from inside. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, but the smell hit me immediately. Rot, mold, something dead. The flashlight beam swept across the room. The bed was stripped bare. The walls were scratched, deep claw marks like someone had tried to escape. And in the bathroom mirror, written in something dark and dry, were the words, "He won't let me leave." The crying stopped. Behind me, the door slammed shut. I spun around, heart racing. The room felt colder now. A man stood near the window, tall, thin. His face was wrong, features stretched, Eyes too deep, smile too wide. "You opened it," he said calmly. "Now you see her." The bathroom door creaked open. The woman stepped out. But she didn't look human anymore. Her skin was gray, her eyes hollow, her mouth opened too wide as she screamed. I bolted for the door. It wouldn't open. The man laughed softly. "Night shift always opens the door." The lights flickered. Suddenly the door flew open on its own. I didn't look back. I ran down the stairs so fast I nearly fell. I burst into the lobby, gasping, shaking. The clock read 3:17 a.m. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and headed for the exit. But before I could leave, the motel manager walked in. "You okay?" he asked. I stared at him like he wasn't real. "Room 208, I said. "There's something wrong with it." His expression changed, slowly. "You went in?" he asked. I nodded. He sighed deeply. "We keep it empty for a reason," he said. "Years ago, a man murdered a woman in that room, lived there for weeks with her body, killed anyone who tried to interfere." My blood ran cold. "Then he killed himself," the manager continued. "Since then, night staff never last." I quit that morning. I left town before sunset. But sometimes, late at night, my phone rings at exactly 1:47 a.m. When I answer, there's breathing, and a voice that whispers, "She's still inside." I didn't want to look toward the basement. Every instinct in my body told me not to, but curiosity has a way of winning. Slowly, I turned my head. The basement door was open, just a few inches, but I knew for a fact I had closed it earlier. Cold air poured out from the gap, rolling across the floor like the house was exhaling. I stepped closer. Each step felt heavier than the last. The light above the stairs flickered once, then steadied. I stood at the top of the staircase, staring down into darkness so thick it looked solid. That's when I heard breathing. Not mine. Deep, slow, patient. It came from somewhere below. I whispered, "Hello?" My voice sounded small, weak. The breathing stopped instantly. And in that silence, a thought hit me harder than fear. Whatever was down there was listening. I stood there at the top of the basement stairs, too afraid to move forward and too afraid to turn back. The darkness below me felt alive, like it was waiting. Then the voice came again, clear this time. "Come down." My heart slammed against my ribs. It sounded exactly like me. Same tone, same hesitation, same fear. I took a step back, shaking my head. "That's not funny," I said. The voice chuckled softly. "You already know what's down here," it whispered. "You just don't remember yet." My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The screen cracked, but it stayed on. In the reflection, I saw movement. Not behind me, below the stairs. Something tall shifted in the darkness, stretching upward slowly. That's when I understood the truth. This wasn't a warning to stay away. It was an invitation. And whatever was calling me was very patient. I backed away from the stairs slowly, never taking my eyes off the darkness. That's when the shadow moved. It stretched along the basement wall, longer than any human shadow should be. It didn't walk. It slid. The light above the stairs flickered again, and for just a second I saw its shape. Too tall, too thin. Its arms bent the wrong way, like it was learning how to use them. I tried to run. My legs wouldn't respond. The shadow reached the bottom step and stopped, waiting. Then it lifted its head. I couldn't see a face, but I felt its attention lock onto me. That's when the lights went out. Total darkness. And in the silence, something brushed against my ankle. Not cold, not warm, just wrong. A few months later, I was still working at that same gas station. I know, bad decision, but bills needed to be paid, and I'd convinced myself that lightning doesn't strike twice. It was another late night, another shift where the store was completely dead, and the silence felt heavy enough to touch. Then the door chimed. This time it was a man in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit. It was midnight. We were in the middle of nowhere. and this guy looked like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom. Something about it felt immediately wrong. He didn't browse the aisles or look at the shelves. He walked straight toward me with purpose, like he knew exactly why he was there. He reached into his jacket, and for a split second my heart stopped. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a photograph and placed it carefully on the counter between us. I looked down at it, and my blood turned to ice. It was him, the blood-covered man from that night, the one the police never found. The suited man stared directly into my eyes and asked in a calm, measured voice, "Have you ever seen this man before?" Every instinct in my gut was screaming at me to deny it, to say nothing, to get out of this situation however I could. So I lied. "I haven't," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The silence that followed was unbearable. Long, painful, suffocating. He just stood there studying my face like he was reading every thought in my head, searching for the truth behind my words. I could feel sweat forming on my palms. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he picked up the photograph and tucked it back into his jacket. He turned and walked toward the door, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten away with it. But then he stopped. He turned back to look at me one more time, and with absolute certainty in his voice, he said, "I know you're lying." Then he walked out into the night and disappeared. Weeks passed after that encounter, and I tried to convince myself it was over. But then I started noticing things. A silver SUV that seemed to show up wherever I went. Outside the gas station during my shifts. In the parking lot at the grocery store. Parked on my street when I came home. At first I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just a coincidence. But the coincidences kept piling up. 3 weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of glass shattering in my living room. My heart was pounding as I grabbed a baseball bat and ran out to see what had happened. There was no one inside my apartment, no intruder hiding in the shadows. Just a rock sitting in the middle of my living room floor, surrounded by shattered glass from my window. There was no note attached to it, no message spray painted on my walls. Nothing. But I understood perfectly. This was a warning. I quit my job the next day. I didn't give 2 weeks' notice, didn't explain to my boss why I was leaving. I just walked away. Then I moved to a different town, and when that didn't feel far enough, I moved to a different state entirely. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media, tried to erase any trace of where I'd gone. To this day, I still don't know who that man in the suit was or why he cared so much that I'd called the police that night. I don't know if he was a cop, a criminal, or something else entirely. And I never found out what happened to the blood-covered man in the photograph. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about it all. And I wonder if maybe I had it wrong from the beginning. Maybe the first guy, the one covered in blood, wasn't actually the real danger. Maybe he was just a piece of something much bigger and darker. Maybe I made a terrible mistake by getting involved in something I was never meant to witness, something that was always going to follow me no matter how far I ran. Because the truth is, I still check my rearview mirror more than I should. I still notice every silver SUV that parks near me. And sometimes when I'm alone at night, I wonder if they ever really stopped watching. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. This happened 8 months ago, after I'd already moved away and started a different job in a different town. I thought I'd left everything behind, that I could finally just live a normal life. But some things have a way of finding you no matter where you go. I was driving home from a long shift, completely exhausted with a 3-hour drive ahead of me. It was around 11 p.m. when I pulled into a gas station, deciding I was too tired to keep going safely. I parked my truck in a quiet corner of the lot, reclined my seat, and fell asleep almost instantly. About an hour later, I woke up feeling somewhat rested. I started the engine and got back on the road, eager to get home and sleep in my own bed. The highway was empty, just me in the darkness stretching out in front of my headlights. Everything seemed normal. Then, about 20 minutes into driving, I heard a faint thumping sound coming from behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. I had tools in the truck bed, and I just assumed something had shifted around, maybe rolling back and forth as I took curves in the road. I kept driving, Then it happened. A violent, explosive crack right behind my head that made my heart nearly stop. I whipped around to look through the rear window, and what I saw made no sense. There was a man in my truck bed, standing upright, and he was smashing the glass divider between us with one of my own tools, swinging it like he was trying to break through a cage. His face was twisted with desperation and rage, and he kept hitting the glass over and over. I panicked. I swerved hard, nearly losing complete control of the truck. The vehicle spun halfway onto the shoulder, tires screeching, and somehow I managed to stop without rolling it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unbuckle my seatbelt, but I ripped it off and threw myself out of the truck, stumbling onto the gravel. The man jumped down from the truck bed the moment I got out. He didn't say a word, didn't even look at me. He just ran straight for the tree line and disappeared into the darkness. For a split second, I almost chased after him. Almost. But some survival instinct told me to let him go, to just get out of there as fast as I could. I got back in my truck, my whole body trembling, and drove. I didn't stop until I was miles away, until the adrenaline started to wear off and I could think clearly again. That's when I remembered to check the truck bed to see if anything was missing or damaged. What I found made everything so much worse. There was a small trash bag back there, tightly wrapped and tied. It was wet to the touch, and when I picked it up, the smell hit me immediately. Rotting meat. The kind of smell that makes your stomach turn and your brain scream that something is very, very wrong. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I just threw it as far as I could into the woods and got back in my truck. As I drove away, my hands still shaking on the steering wheel, I looked down and noticed something that made my skin crawl. My hands were tinted red. Not bright red like fresh blood, but stained, like I'd touched something I shouldn't have. I never called the police. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared they'd ask questions I couldn't answer. Maybe I was scared of what they'd find if they went looking. Or maybe I was just tired of being connected to things that normal people never have to deal with. But here's what I know for certain, the part that my brain keeps coming back to over and over again. That man had to have climbed into my truck bed while I was asleep at the gas station. There's no other explanation, which means for nearly 20 minutes after I woke up and started driving, he was lying there in complete silence, just waiting, watching me through that rear window, planning whatever he was planning. I was driving down a dark highway, alone, thinking I was safe, and the whole time, there was someone right behind me. That thought is what keeps me up at night. Not the violence, not even the bag with whatever was inside it. It's knowing that he was there the entire time, patient and silent. And I had no idea. It's wondering what would have happened if he'd broken through that glass. It's realizing how close I came to something I can't even fully imagine. And sometimes I wonder if it was random, or if somehow it was connected to everything else. If maybe I was recognized. If maybe someone wanted to send another message. Because when you've seen the things I've seen, when you've become part of something dark, whether you wanted to or not, coincidences stop feeling like coincidences. They start feeling like warnings,